The handsome black man saw her get dumped on her birthday, right there in the middle of his own restaurant. He watched her partner tell her it was over, drop some cash on the table, and walk out like it was nothing. Sarah was not prepared for this. This was supposed to be the day Derek proposed to her, as he had hinted earlier. She had already begun to cry, broken down completely under utter humiliation. And just then, Marcus walked to her table and said, "Can I have this dance?" Sarah Mitchell had told herself all day that tonight would be perfect. She had chosen the cream dress specifically, the one that made her feel elegant and confident, the one Derek had complimented 6 months ago. She had done her makeup carefully, her hands steady even though her heart had been racing since morning. 3 years with Derek, and tonight, her 28th birthday, he had promised would be special. Special meant a proposal, it had to. He had been so deliberate about choosing Eclat, one of the nicest restaurants in the city, making reservations weeks in advance. He had told her to dress up, that he had something important planned. Sarah had told her mother, her best friend, even a few co-workers. The ring was coming. Finally, the ring was coming. She arrived at Eclat 15 minutes early, too anxious to wait at home. The hostess led her to their table, an intimate spot near the window, with a view of the city lights. Sarah ordered water, checked her phone, smoothed her dress. Derek was running late. But that was normal. He was always running late. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. When Derek finally walked in 40 minutes after their reservation time, Sarah's smile faltered. He looked distracted, his tie loosened, his eyes not quite meeting hers as he slid into the chair across from her. "Hey, sorry," he said. No explanation, no apology in his tone. Traffic was bad. "It's okay," Sarah said, reaching across the table for his hand. He pulled back slightly, pretending to adjust his napkin. Her stomach tightened. They ordered. Derek barely looked at the menu, barely looked at her. Sarah tried to fill the silence with talk about her day, a funny story from work, anything to break through whatever wall he had built between them. He nodded, checked his phone twice, and when their appetizers arrived, he pushed his plate away after one bite. "Derek," she said quietly, "what's wrong?" He finally looked at her, really looked at her, and Sarah saw it in his eyes before he said a word. She knew. Somehow, she knew. "Sarah, I can't do this anymore." The restaurant noise faded, the clinking silverware, the soft laughter from nearby tables. All of it became distant, muffled, underwater. "What?" she whispered. Derek shifted in his seat, uncomfortable, almost annoyed. "I've been seeing someone. From the firm. It has been a few months, and I can't keep doing this." "I should have told you sooner." Sarah's hands gripped the edge of the table. Her birthday. He was doing this on her birthday, in public, at the restaurant where she had expected him to propose. "You're breaking up with me," she said, her voice cracking. "Right now, on my birthday." Derek had the decency to look briefly guilty, but it passed quickly, replaced by something colder. "I'm sorry about the timing, but I thought it was better to be honest. I can't lead you on." "Lead me on?" Sarah repeated, and a bitter laugh escaped her. 3 years, Derek! 3 years! And you thought tonight was the time to be honest? Derek reached into his wallet, pulled out several bills, and placed them on the table. "This should cover dinner." "I'm sorry, Sarah. I really am." He stood, and Sarah sat frozen, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to process that this was actually happening. Derek walked away, weaving through tables, and then he was gone. Sarah sat there, staring at the empty chair, at the cash he had left, like she was a bill to be settled. Around her, she could feel eyes watching. People who had noticed, who had heard, who were now looking at her with pity. Her hands started to shake, her vision blurred. Then, from the kitchen, a waiter emerged carrying a small cake, candles lit, and Sarah's heart dropped into her stomach. The pre-ordered birthday cake. Derek had ordered it weeks ago, back when he was still pretending, still planning to do this on her birthday, but had not bothered to cancel the cake. The waiter approached, smiling, oblivious, and set the cake down in front of her. "Happy birthday," he said cheerfully. Sarah looked at the cake, at the flickering candles. at the "Happy Birthday, Sarah," written in delicate script, and something inside her shattered. The tears came suddenly, uncontrollably, deep sobs that shook her whole body. She covered her face with her hands, but it was too late. Everyone was watching now, the whole restaurant witnessing her humiliation. The waiter stepped back, alarmed, unsure what to do. Another staff member hurried over, whispering urgently. Sarah could not stop crying, could not catch her breath, could not do anything but sit there in her cream dress, with her birthday cake and her broken heart on display for everyone to see. From across the dining room, Marcus Thompson noticed the commotion. He had been making his evening rounds, checking in with regulars, ensuring everything ran smoothly. Eclat was his pride. 12 years of work, from washing dishes to owning the place, and he prided himself on knowing when something was wrong. He saw the young woman at table 7, crying into her hands. He saw the birthday cake with lit candles, the elegant dress, the empty chair across from her, the cash left on the table. He saw his staff standing nearby. Frozen, unsure how to handle the situation. Marcus met the waiter's eyes, gave a small nod, and started walking toward the table. He did not know her story. Not yet. But he recognized the look of someone whose world had just collapsed. He had worn that look himself once, years ago, and he remembered how desperately he had needed someone to see him, really see him, in that moment. As he approached, Sarah looked up. Mascara streaked down her face, eyes red and desperate. Marcus stopped at her table, hands clasped in front of him, his voice calm and gentle. "Miss," he said softly, "I'm Marcus, the owner here, and if you'll allow me, I'd like to ask you something." Sarah looked up at Marcus through her tears, confused, mortified that now the owner himself was here to witness her breakdown. She tried to wipe her face, tried to pull herself together, but her hands were shaking too badly. "I'm so sorry," she managed to choke out. "I'll leave. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause a scene." Marcus held up a gentle hand. "You haven't caused anything," he said, "and you're not going anywhere. Not yet." He glanced at the birthday cake, the flickering candles, then back at her face. "It is your birthday," he said quietly. Sarah let out a bitter laugh that turned into another sob. "Yes. Happy birthday to me." Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying her with kind eyes that held no pity, only understanding. Then, he did something Sarah never expected. He extended his hand to her. "May I have this dance?" Sarah stared at his outstretched hand, certain she had misheard. "What?" "A dance," Marcus repeated, his voice steady, warm. "Everyone deserves at least one moment of grace on their birthday." Sarah looked around at the other diners watching, at the staff still hovering uncertainly, at this stranger offering his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this?" Marcus smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "Because I know what it feels like to have the worst night of your life in public. And I know how much it means when someone chooses to see you, instead of look away." Sarah's breath caught. She looked at his hand again, still extended, patient, waiting. And before she could overthink it, before fear or embarrassment could stop her, she placed her trembling hand in his. Marcus helped her stand, her legs unsteady beneath her. He guided her away from the table, to a small open space near the pianist. He gave the pianist a subtle nod, and the music shifted, a soft jazz standard filling the air. Marcus kept a respectful distance as they began to move, one hand holding hers, the other resting lightly at her waist. Sarah felt the eyes of the restaurant on them, but somehow, in Marcus's steady presence, it felt less like judgment and more like witnessing. Not her humiliation, but her survival of it. "I don't even know you," Sarah said quietly as they swayed. "Sometimes that makes it easier," Marcus replied. "No expectations. No history. Just this moment." They danced in silence for a while, and Sarah felt something shift inside her. The tightness in her chest began to loosen. Her breathing steadied. She was not okay, not even close. But she was standing. She was moving. She was still here. When the song ended, Marcus did not immediately let go. He looked at her seriously. "Have you eaten anything tonight?" Sarah shook her head. "No. He left before." "Come with me," Marcus said, and led her toward the back of the restaurant. past curious diners, past his staff, who watched with a mixture of surprise and approval. He brought her to a private corner booth, tucked away from the main dining area. "Wait here," he said, and disappeared into the kitchen. Sarah sat in the quiet booth, still dazed, still processing what had just happened. A stranger had just danced with her in front of his entire restaurant. A stranger had just shown her more kindness in 5 minutes than Derek had shown her in months. Marcus returned 15 minutes later, carrying 2 plates. "This is not on the menu," he said, setting one in front of her. "It is my grandmother's recipe. Comfort food. Real comfort food." Sarah looked down at the plate, some kind of stew with bread, simple and warm, and smelling like home. "You made this yourself?" "I own a restaurant," Marcus said with a slight smile. "But I still know how to cook, especially when it matters." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. And Sarah realized she was starving. The food was perfect, exactly what she needed, without knowing she needed it. "Do you want to talk about it?" Marcus asked gently. And somehow, Sarah did. She told him everything, about Derek, about the 3 years, about how she had been so sure tonight would be a proposal, about telling everyone, about wearing this specific dress, about feeling like the biggest fool in the world. "You're not a fool," Marcus said quietly. "You trusted someone. That is not foolish. That is brave." "It does not feel brave," Sarah said, her voice breaking again. "It feels stupid." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice carrying its own weight of old pain. 5 years ago, I was engaged. Her name was Lisa. We were supposed to get married in June. In May, I found out she had been sleeping with my best friend, my business partner at the time. She left me for him 2 weeks before the wedding." Sarah looked up at him, seeing the shadow of that hurt still lingering in his eyes. "I thought I would never recover," Marcus continued. "I thought that pain would kill me, but it did not. Instead, I used it. I bought out my partner, worked every day for 12 years, built this place from nothing. That heartbreak redirected my entire life." "Did you ever?" Sarah hesitated. "Did you ever stop hurting?" "Eventually," Marcus said honestly. "But not right away, and not without doing the work. I had to figure out who I was without her, without that future I had planned. I had to let go of who I thought I should be, and discover who I actually was." Sarah felt tears sliding down her face again, but quieter now, less desperate. "I always wanted to write," she admitted. "Stories, articles, anything. But Derek said it was not practical. He pushed me toward marketing, toward stability. And I listened because I thought he knew better." "Maybe he knew what was better for him," Marcus said. "But not what was better for you." They talked for hours, the restaurant slowly emptying around them, staff cleaning up quietly while giving them space. Sarah told Marcus about her deferred dreams, her fear of starting over at 28, her embarrassment at having to tell everyone what happened. Marcus listened without judgment, without trying to fix anything, just present and attentive, in a way that made Sarah feel truly seen for the first time in years. Eventually, as the restaurant closed down, Marcus walked Sarah to the door. Before she left, he pulled out a business card and handed it to her. "If you ever want to talk," he said, "the corner booth is always open. No pressure, no expectations. Just if you need it." Sarah took the card, her fingers brushing his. "Thank you," she whispered. "I do not know why you did this, but thank you." Marcus smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. "Do not let this break you, Sarah. Let it redirect you. You are stronger than you think." Sarah stepped out into the cool night air, Marcus's card clutched in her hand, and for the first time since Derek walked away, she felt something other than pain. She felt possibility. 6 months had passed since that night at Eclat, and Sarah's life had become unrecognizable in the best possible way. She had called Marcus a week after her birthday, nervous, her finger hovering over his number for 10 minutes before she finally pressed dial. When he answered on the second ring, warm and unsurprised, like he had been waiting, they had talked for 2 hours about everything and nothing. That became their rhythm. Coffee meetings that stretched into lunch, lunch that became dinner, conversations that made the hours disappear. 3 weeks after that first call, Sarah walked into her supervisor's office and quit her marketing job. Her hands shook as she typed the resignation email, her mother's panicked voice still echoing in her head from their phone call the night before. "You can't just throw away a stable career, Sarah. You're being reckless." But when she pressed send, the weight that had been sitting on her chest for 3 years finally lifted. She started writing again. Really writing, not corporate copy or soulless ad campaigns, but real words that meant something. She launched a blog called Reconstructed, pouring her story into it. The heartbreak, the public humiliation, the unexpected kindness of a stranger, the slow and painful work of putting yourself back together, piece by piece. The response stunned her. Messages flooded in from people who had lived their own versions of her worst night, who saw themselves in her words, who needed to know they were not alone in their rebuilding. The blog grew, and with it came freelance writing offers, essays and articles for websites and magazines, work that made her feel alive in a way her old job never had. Through everything, Marcus was there, not hovering, not trying to fix her or save her, just steadily, quietly present. He read every post, celebrated every new opportunity, sat with her through the moments when doubt crept back in, and whispered that she had not made a mistake leaving stability behind. Their friendship deepened naturally, inevitably. Sarah could not pinpoint the exact moment things shifted, when comfortable silence became charged with something more, when his smile started making her heart race in a way that was terrifying and thrilling all at once. Maybe it was the night they stayed up until dawn, talking about fear and faith. Or the afternoon he showed up at her apartment with soup when she had the flu. Or maybe it was the accumulation of 100 small moments that added up to something undeniable. 3 months after her birthday, Marcus asked her to dinner at a tiny Thai place neither of them had tried. Over pad Thai and spring rolls, he reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. "I do not want to rush you," he said, his voice careful, vulnerable in a way she had never heard before. "But I need you to know, this is more than friendship for me. It has been for a while." Sarah had smiled, relief flooding through her like sunlight. "I was hoping you would say that." Now, 1 year after the worst night of her life, Sarah stood in her apartment getting ready for her birthday. Again. But this time, everything was different. This time she wore a blue dress she had chosen for herself, not to impress anyone or meet anyone's expectations. This time, she was not waiting for someone else to make her night special. Her phone buzzed. "Marcus, asterisk. Come to the restaurant. I have a surprise. Asterisk." Sarah smiled, grabbed her jacket, and headed out into the evening. When she arrived at Eclat, the hostess greeted her with a knowing smile and gestured toward the back. But instead of the familiar corner booth, she led Sarah to a door she had never noticed, up a narrow staircase, and out onto the rooftop. Sarah stopped breathing. String lights crisscrossed overhead, casting everything in a warm, golden glow. The city stretched out beyond the rooftop's edge, a carpet of lights against the darkening sky. In the center sat a small table set with candles, and, she noticed with a laugh that caught in her throat, 2 bowls of Marcus's grandmother's comfort food. Marcus stood beside the table, hands in his pockets, looking nervous, in a way that made her heart swell with affection. "Happy birthday," he said softly. Sarah crossed to him and kissed him, long and slow. "This is perfect," she whispered against his lips. They sat, they ate, they talked about her latest article that had just been accepted by a major publication, and his plans to, maybe, possibly, open a second location next year. The same jazz standard from a year ago played softly from hidden speakers, and when it reached the chorus, Marcus stood and offered his hand. "May I have this dance?" Sarah took it without hesitation. They swayed together under the lights, and this time there was no pain, no humiliation, no desperation. Just joy, pure and uncomplicated, and the bone-deep certainty that sometimes the universe has to break you completely before you can rebuild yourself into something stronger. "I love you," Sarah said, the words easy and true. Marcus pulled back just enough to look at her, his eyes soft in the candlelight. "I have loved you since you first took my hand," he said. "Since that moment you were brave enough to trust a stranger." Sarah smiled. "Do not give Derek credit for this. You told me once, remember? I did the hard work of healing." "You did," Marcus agreed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I just got to watch you become everything you were always meant to be. They kissed under the stars, the city humming below them, the music wrapping around them like a promise of all the good things still to come. Later, standing at the rooftop's edge, looking out at the lights, Sarah thought about that night a year ago, the worst night of her life. The night she had felt so small, so broken, so utterly humiliated, she had wanted to disappear completely, but that night had led her here. To Marcus, to her writing, to a version of herself she had never known existed. Sometimes, the universe breaks you open, so something better can grow in the cracks. Sometimes, strangers show you more kindness than people you have known for years. Sometimes, breakdown is just the first step toward breakthrough. And sometimes, the person who sees you at your absolute worst and responds with grace is exactly the person you have been waiting for all along. Marcus had asked if he could have one dance that night, but what he had really given her was permission to rebuild her entire life. And she would spend every day after, grateful she had been brave enough to say yes, to take his hand, to let herself be seen in her pain, and then, slowly, in her healing. Sarah leaned into Marcus, his arm solid and warm around her waist, and smiled at the city below. She was whole, she was loved, she was exactly where she was meant to be. And it had all started with the courage to take a stranger's hand and dance.